by tears, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I got kicked out of therapy. And I open
My
it and
therapist fired me.
yes, my therapist fired me. Who gets fired from therapy, right? But I opened the piece of paper and it was 14 characteristics of an adult child of an alcoholic. And as I started going down the list, it was like, oh my gosh, check, 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 check. And that was the first time that it hit me. Oh, I'm not the only one. I didn't write this list, but it's all of the things that I'm experiencing.
Welcome to your Wordless Podcast, the space where we redefine success, self-worth, and transformation. I am Nick Nieras, the soul-centered architect of transformation, helping you unlock your highest potential and build a legacy beyond limits. Now, whether it is self-mastery, career breakthroughs, or wealth creation, this is where change begins. Now, let's dive in. What was it like growing up as a Shannon Bryant?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I grew up, my father was an alcoholic and my father was an alcoholic and the environment was very chaotic, violent at times. And we just never knew like what was going to happen. Was he going to be in a good mood? Was he going to be in a bad mood? Was he going to be hungover? Was he going to be drunk? And so it was just this constant chaos in my household. And my parents divorced when I was 12. I told my dad at that time, as long as you're drinking, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And, he took that to heart. So I didn't speak to him again really until I was 25. And that was just briefly. And then we didn't have a relationship until the last 3 years of his life. Very recently, we were able to come back together and build this really beautiful relationship. And I'm so thankful that we were able to do that. But that chaos growing up, the relationship with my dad has just been something that has impacted my adult life in every way.
So that means 12 years later, then you patch things up with him briefly. And then what's the gap between then and then the last?
Yeah. Almost another 20 years. So from the time I was 12 to 25, we didn't speak really. Just had a conversation here or there. And then it was another 20 years after I talked to him then that we, even a little longer, 22 years before we started to have a relationship, before I was ready to say, oh, okay, you know what? This does bother me. This is affecting me that I don't have this relationship with him and all of the things that happened. And so I finally was able to kind of say, okay, I need to take a look at this. And so we were able to build a beautiful relationship.
Lovely. So, Shannon, what is your work? What is your backstory on your career?
Yeah.
And how did jealousy come into play?
Right. Well, so when we go, well, what does one have to do with the other? When most people think of jealousy, and I want to describe the difference between jealousy and envy. So envy is when we feel like our neighbor has a better house or they drive a better car. And envy is, I want something someone else has. Jealousy is, I'm worried someone will take what I have. So this shows up a lot in romantic relationships, mostly in romantic relationships, and then in some friendships even where people could be jealous in that way. But when you grow up in the type of environment that I did, and so most people who experience this morbid jealousy that I help people with, I help women with, they have some dysfunction in their background. And our attachment styles are formed when we're very young, 0 to 8. And this is just really the way that we attach in a relationship. So I'll use myself as an example. Having a father who was an alcoholic, I mentioned, sometimes love felt really good and sometimes love was scary and it didn't feel good. And not having that relationship with my dad, I always had this fear of abandonment, fear of betrayal because he would promise to, show up and then he didn't. And I started to tell myself this story, which is what we do as young children when we really can't make sense of things. We don't have the same kind of logical thinking we do as adults. We don't have the same reasoning. We don't have the same resources. So we typically will make things that we can't understand, we make them about ourselves. And so what I said was, my dad doesn't love me, because I couldn't understand why he would continue to choose alcohol. I didn't understand it being a disease. I didn't understand that, potentially he has a history that led him to alcohol and he really struggled with it. So I would tell myself he doesn't love me. And then as I grew up and I continued to tell this story, I must not be worthy of love. So then I would get into relationships, sometimes with perfectly fine people, but I would ruin it because I was jealous. In my relationship, I would get really insecure and jealous. I was always afraid they were going to leave me. They were going to cheat on me. And I had some proof because I was also in relationships with some not so great men who did cheat on me, who didn't treat me well. And sometimes I stayed way too long in those relationships because of my insecurity. So this was something that I battled with constantly. And I was talking to a women's ACA group, just sharing my story, what it was like to grow up with a father who was an alcoholic. And I talked about my jealousy and how it continued to show up over and over and over again in my relationships until started digging in and figuring out, okay, what's at the root of this? End of that talk, all these hands went up and women were saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe you were talking about that. I can't believe you admitted that you went through your, partner's phone and their text message and that you were tracking him. All the stuff we don't want to say that we have done. We were talking about it. And for the first time, they were able to go, oh my gosh, I feel that way too. I have done those things too. And I don't know how to stop feeling jealous and insecure. So I started the podcast.
No.
And from there, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you started the podcast from there. Okay. And then?
Yeah, I started the podcast from there and was overwhelmed by the amount of women who reached out and went, thank you so much. I thought I was the only person. I can't believe you're saying these things out loud. And how do I stop being jealous in relationships? So I also have one-on-one coaching that I offer. I offer a group boot camp to help people out and courses as well. So that all falls under the Top Self company.
There's so much to unpack, Shannon. Like, number one, I was gonna ask you, how did the relationship of your father played out in the relationship? How did it connect between your father and you feeling insecure with your, then partners? Hi, I'm Nick Nieras, your host of the Your Worthless podcast. Now, if these real raw stories hit home, don't wait. Please follow, like, and subscribe my Spotify and YouTube. For bite-sized inspirational reels, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Don't wait. Your transformation starts today. Thank you, and bye for now.
Right. Yeah. Well, when you start to tell yourself those stories, which we all do, kind of going back to when I was a kid and I would say, oh, he must not love me. He doesn't love me. Well, whose dad doesn't love them must be unlovable. I must be unworthy of love. And when you feel like you're unworthy, when you feel like you're unlovable, it's really hard to be in relationship. The other part of that too was I grew up in chaos. As much as I hated it as a child, that became my subconscious programming. That became my comfort zone for things to be chaotic all the time. So then when I would get in relationships with perfectly healthy people, secure people, and everything was okay. I remember when I was first dating my husband and I was like, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing happening. Everything is fine. And so I would drum up this chaos. Yes. I would, okay, what can I stir up? Not intentionally, not consciously, but because that was my subconscious programming, I was always going to go back to that as long as I felt like I didn't deserve love, I wasn't worthy of love, and, all of the other core wounds and core beliefs that we negatively have. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not funny enough. All the I'm not enough always played out in my relationships.
this is my favorite topic too because I do hypnotherapy and the root cause of everything is just most of the issues, they're just the foundations are just three. Number one, you're not lovable. Number one, you're different. And number one, you're not worthy. So if you understand this three core and that all of this are most likely than not related to your childhood,
Yeah. Yeah.
0 to 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And these are the programs that have been conditioned into somebody's subconscious, and that would play out in all of the relationships in their lives, their career, their love life, and the community at large. Now, I want to ask you, Shannon, when did you actually discover or understood that, okay, this is actually basing from my relationship with my dad?
Yeah. So I, of course, was in therapy, saw many therapists, and I would talk about this jealousy. And to be quite honest, not a lot of them understood it. And it's one of those things where it's really hard if you've never experienced it to understand, because I would be in relationships where no one has necessarily done anything yet, but every day was filled with anxiety, worried about who they were talking to, where they were going, what they were doing. And so I'd seen many therapists. And the last therapist in particular, I'd been going to her for maybe a couple months. And at the end of, towards the end of the session, she said, "Thank you, Shannon, for, spending time with me and sharing some things about you over the last 2 months, but I think it's time to end our therapy relationship." And I was like, "What? Like, here I am going to you for abandonment issues and things like that. And you're kicking me out." I got kicked out of therapy, basically.
Why?
Yeah.
My first question.
Right. Well, I had promised. So I would go in and every week I would say, "Okay, I'm not going to be jealous." And we would talk about it. And here's the plan. And here's what you're going to do. And here's what you're going to tell yourself when you're feeling that way. And every week I'd feel completely motivated to do it and felt like I could conquer it. And then I would fail again. The minute, something would happen, I'd see somebody who I thought was a potential threat, my partner, looking at someone, I couldn't do it. So over and over and over again, week after week, I just wasn't making any progress. The best thing that happened though, on my way out, she gave me a folded piece of paper. And I got in my car, wiping it around, my tears, like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that I got kicked out of therapy." And I open it.
My therapist fired you.
Yes, my therapist fired me. Who gets fired from therapy, right? But I opened the piece of paper and it was 14 characteristics of an adult child of an alcoholic. And as I started going down the list, it was like, oh my gosh, check, 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 check. And that was the first time that it hit me. Oh, I'm not the only one. I didn't write this list, but it's all of the things that I'm experiencing.
Becoming a podcast host was a natural extension of my second act. Now, after spending 15 years in the corporate world, I've transitioned to helping individuals overcome challenges like navigating tough relationships, career burnout, and aligning their mission with their soul's calling. By certifying as an RTT hypnotherapist and a lifestyle coach, I've made it my mission to empower people to recreate the life they deserve and building a supportive community through my podcast. Now let me ask, are you facing challenges like struggling to reprogram your mind to attract wealth, weight issues that feel like a constant yo-yo, insomnia or restless nights from daily worries, or just a lack of confidence in public speaking? If the answer is yes, visit www.thenicknyerasholisticlifestyle.com and grab a free hypnosis audio of these common struggles. It's a sneak peek into how my coaching works. Are you feeling shy? Don't be, because I'm as real as it gets. Let's connect on Instagram and LinkedIn and start your transformation today.
So there must be other people, because up until that point, I just really thought, this is how I'm made. And there's no changing me. I'm doomed to be this way for the rest of my life. And I don't know what it is that's wrong. So that's when I really started to investigate, knowing that if there were other people that were experiencing these things on this list, same as me, then there also must be a solution. And so that's when I, started going down this track, and then eventually learning about attachment theory and asking questions. And I think for anyone who's struggling with anything that's just been kind of poking at you for a while, especially things where we can go, oh, I have felt this way for the last 5 years or 10 years, or in some people's cases, 30 years, get curious about it. Why am I feeling this way? Why does this keep happening? Or what is causing? And that's kind of my biggest, maybe not why, but what is causing? Because sometimes when we say why, we get some not truthful answers back to that question. So
That's right.
I think better to say, what is causing me to habitually do this thing? What is causing me to feel anxiety every day? And then really start to get curious about it.
I love the part when you said the anxiety. It's because whenever you feel, or it's almost like you're manifesting it. My partner, he must be talking to somebody else right now. Or every time he looks at the phone, or the way that he puts the phone on the table, if it's like this.
Yes,
That
that's
must
the
be
big
something.
That's the sign, right? If they put their phone upside down, that's it. Yeah.
He's cheating.
That's right. Automatic, right? That's what we
Automatic.
think.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And then you can actually feel that taking over your life. You can't concentrate on your work. You can't give your best self to your family, especially if you have children, right? And I can relate so much because during my previous relationship, I too was that. And the way I realized that it wasn't healthy was because, imagine this, I was at the peak of my career, but all I was doing, I think about 70% of the time, I was seconded to a location, a project, but I would be on the phone fighting with my
Yes.
dead partner. Just because, I don't know, something that's very trivial, but also, it has to be addressed immediately. So it was a constant battle between me praying that it's not true, but also trying to uncover the truth. Like, you tell me right now, please
Right.
be honest,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm
Right.
not a fool.
Right.
And that can be so detrimental to your mental health. Like you mentioned, people could stay in relationship for far too long.
Yeah.
And then, they have this mental health issue. They become depressive and they become just unmotivated in life. So let's say you have a person that's actually a friend in your circle that's going through that. As a friend, what would you actually say to this
Yeah.
person?
Well, and thank you for sharing a part of your story, because that's exactly it, right? When we're in this, all of our energy is going toward, what is our partner doing? Who are they talking to? Where are they? Are they where they said they would be? Are they doing what they said they would do? There's a lot, right, that goes into this. And I see it often with women with friends who sometimes there is that reason. And so then because they have maybe been with a partner who has done those very things. And that's a lot too what has to do with being triggered when you're in that current relationship, because our amygdala in our brain is there to keep us alive. That's the job of the brain. Like, how can we do things the most efficient way and still keep you alive? And for the amygdala, that's like your seeing eye dog. That's kind of like on hyper alert. Yeah, it's constantly looking for that. Well, constantly looking for things that look familiar that you've experienced before that were unpleasant. right? Because we needed that to survive as humans. And that hasn't really changed.
So we can act on them
That's right.
accordingly.
Yes. So it's one of those, we've heard the story, like, is it a snake or a stick? Our amygdala is going to tell us if we've experienced this, maybe in the past, I've experienced an interaction with a snake, right? Or partner. Right? If I've had this
Fill in the
experience,
blank.
yeah, I've had this experience with a snake before. My amygdala is going to be on the lookout for anything that resembles that in the slightest. And it's going to tell you, oh my gosh, there's a snake, there's a snake, there's a snake. And it immediately sends all of the signals to your body, as it should, to get to safety, to protect yourself. And so this is a lot of times when someone says they're triggered in relationships, and you mentioned about the phone being placed face down. That is a big trigger for some people. And that is because previous partners may have cheated via phone, text message. They may have found text messages, or maybe it was social media and they saw it on their phone. So they're connecting the dots. So their amygdala now is on hyper alert about the phone. And it's going to send, when you see that, you're going to get all of those same feelings like it's a snake. Your heart rate's going to increase. Your stomach's going to feel like it's in knots. Maybe you have a lump in your throat. All of those physical things are going to start to happen because that's the job of the amygdala. Way back when, it was to get us to take cover, to run from the snake, whatever the proper thing is we're supposed to do when there's a snake. And it could just be a snake, right? It could just be. But our cortex and our brain needs time to get that information from the amygdala and process it. But in between there, when the amygdala first gets that signal, it is pushing your body to do something, which is often why we react very quickly. We might make a snarky comment. We might react when we see that phone placed down because our cortex hasn't caught up to process, like, okay, wait a second. I might just be relating this back to a previous time. And so we kind of get caught in that pattern of, I'm not really sure. And then if there is something going on with that partner, it reinforces that amygdala even stronger to go, yep, see, you were right to signal that to me. You were right to do that. And we'll keep an eye out even more next time. And so we get in this kind of vicious cycle sometimes. Yeah.
Just reliving some memories, flashbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so women, or I'm not just going to, focus on women because men could be the victim too. So individuals who are faced in this predicament, who face this kind of predicament, what options do they have?
So this is where, thank you for asking that, because going back to how this really all started. So if we use me again as an example, in my childhood, feeling like I'm unworthy, you touched on, right? Those big core wounds, I'm unworthy, I'm not loved, or, all of those things. Those were formed through what I call the 3 imprint elements. So the way that these patterns of thinking are created that then become habitual thoughts that we have that then, of course, lead to our actions, because all thoughts lead to actions. Thoughts and emotions generate our actions. So it's really starting with these thoughts. And the way that they are patterned or programmed in is through repetition plus emotion. Repetition plus emotion is what programs life's commotion every single time. So there are 3 things: what I witness, what I hear, and what I experience. So as a child, if I constantly witness my father cheating on my mom, right? I'm going to then, this is a pattern, this is a belief that I start to get. If I constantly witness that love is scary, so maybe I'm witnessing abuse as a child, and I see that love is scary, I might then in relationships be what we call a dismissive avoidant attachment, because love is scary to me. I need love and connection because I'm a human being. So all of us need that, but it's super scary to me. So I might get in relationship with someone, and then when it gets serious, I will push them away. So all of these patterns are made the same way, repetition plus emotion. we can take one example. We say repetition plus emotion. Those are the two ways. It doesn't always have to have the repetition part, though, because we could take, for instance, I was in a robbery when I was very young. My son was only 3, and I was in an armed robbery. They put a gun to my head, pulled me back into the gas station, threw me on the floor.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. But it didn't, that didn't need to happen twice for me to be a little bit nervous about going to a gas station at dark after that for a very long time, right? Or someone who's in a really bad car wreck. They may have never thought or been worried about driving, and then they're in a very severe car accident, and now they're afraid to drive. Emotion is the big part of it, but repetition plus emotion is typically how these patterns are created in us. So we unprogram them the exact same way. So if one of my core beliefs are I'm not good enough or I'm unworthy, then we take the opposite of that. I am good enough. I am worthy. And we come up with these pieces of evidence where you have proven that, you've shown that in your life. And then these are things that we want to see the image. We want to anchor into that specific situation. And we do this over and over again for a minimum of 21 days, sometimes potentially longer, to help, right, with that thought that we have. Because where a lot of people get hung up, and I'll, this is if you don't hear anything else today, hear this. When a lot of people go to do this work and they feel like, okay, let's take someone who's jealous. I'm not going to be jealous anymore. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to feel confident. And then just like me, when I was in therapy, something would happen. We'd go to a restaurant. There's a beautiful hostess, and out the window, my confidence went, right? That's it. And now I'm upset. So forever, I would think I'm just not someone who can overcome this. I don't have the right things in me to do it. I'm not smart enough to overcome it. I don't have enough willpower. And I want to say, if you're feeling like that, if you've tried anything over and over and you feel like, oh, I just kept failing, it isn't that. It's that you're doing it from your conscious mind, just saying words to yourself. I'm telling myself I'm going to be more confident. That doesn't work. It only works about 5% of the time. As neuroscience has proved that, our subconscious leads, 95% of all of our actions, right? So you can't do it from the conscious level. But unfortunately, a lot of us don't know that we have to go in and we have to reprogram those beliefs that we have. Otherwise, it's just like a GPS. It's going to continue to route you right back to that same thing every time.
How do we reprogram?
Yeah.
What do you do with your clients?
Yeah. So that's where we go through what's called auto-suggestion for the reprogramming, where we come up with those, 10 to 15 pieces of evidence of the opposite of what you're believing. Now, a lot of us have, we may have 5 or 6 negative core beliefs. We start with one. And a lot of times when we get really going good on the one, sometimes the other ones will come along. But as I described, we'll take the opposite. We'll come up with these pieces of evidence where they can really anchor in, what was the situation that you were worthy, that you were enough. And we're doing that through repetition every single day. And with my one-on-one clients, we've got a accountability thing where they're sending me, hey, this is day 3 of, auto programming. We're doing those things. So we're connecting the whole time during those 21 days. But I think, it's starting with the awareness and the understanding that it isn't that you don't have it in you to change. It's just your approach might not be correct because we're trying to do it from the conscious mind. We're just trying to tell ourselves or convince ourselves.
And we don't believe it.
And we don't believe it. That's exactly right. You don't underneath really believe it still.
Exactly. You don't believe that you're worthy of a healthy relationship or healthy partner that's going to give you love and be transparent with you, be honest with you.
That's right. That's right. And what's really unfortunate that I see a lot of times is, as much as, we see all over social media, they've got so many videos on like looking for the red flags or hear red flags about people and relationships and all those things. And so this is where a lot of times we get really tripped up because it's like, oh my gosh, we're in relationship. Yeah, check, all these things. But then also, we're in relationship with someone And we're like, man, and then something happens. So let's say that partner does cheat on us. We go, gosh, I don't understand this. Why did this happen again to me? I was very diligent about looking for red flags. I really did question this. I really did think through this. And here I am again with another person who didn't treat me well, who did this to me. If you've had that happen over and over and over again, it is because even though you feel like you're really diligent in all these things, your subconscious programming, that comfort zone of I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy. Remember mine was the chaos in relationships. That was comfort zone, even though we hated it. So if my comfort zone is I'm not worthy of love, I'm not good enough, I will find men that make sure they keep me in my comfort zone.
Oh my God. That's like the most powerful by far.
Right? I will always find them that will help me stay
myself. There. Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
We like that sink in for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So, what can you talk to us? What are the attachment theories? What are the wrong 4 quadrants?
Yeah. So we can run through them quickly. There's so much with attachment theory. It's almost like it's a whole, and not almost, it is a whole other thing. But there are basically 4 types of attachment styles. Mm-hmm. The first one is secure attachment style. And again, these are typically formed from ages 0 to 8, back to, talking about we as children don't have we don't process things the same. And so we typically will make up stories about ourselves to make things make sense. Okay. That's how attachment styles are formed, essentially. But we've got secure attachment. So this is probably the adult who grew up in a very healthy family where they could share their thoughts and those thoughts were welcomed. They could, maybe when they wanted for something, there was a very, loving way of that child being able to express themselves and then that being received by their parent or caregiver. And so typically these people will grow up to have very healthy relationships. They know how to set healthy boundaries with romantic partners and at work. So that's secure. And that's, we all say that's the goal, right? The goal is to get to that. Yeah, that's ideal. Then we have 3 insecure attachment styles. The first one is the anxious attachment style. And when I say this, I want people to understand, because I think what a lot of times people go is like, when we talk about childhood, like, oh, well, my childhood was fine. My parents didn't do anything wrong. It doesn't have to be that they did something quote unquote wrong, but there was something that affected you, or you absorbed it in a specific way, a story, like you told a story about that event or series of events that could lead to these attachment styles in this way. So for example, I have a client who is anxiously attached, and her mom was a beautiful mother, but she was a single mother. She had to work 2 jobs. So she had to take her to babysitters and other caregivers. And she just longed so much to be with her mom and would cry and couldn't wait, was always anxiously awaiting for her mom to come home. She was worried about her mom all the time, working at night and things like that. So I'm going to grow up with kind of this anxious, like, is somebody going to
take my mom away from me?
Yeah, abandon me or right. And abandonment is the number 1 core wound for an anxiously attached person who has that anxious attachment. So that's their big one. There's a, list. But these people also tend to not have boundaries in relationships, because if I have all they want, love and connection, right? If I set a boundary, that's something that could stand between me and love and connection. So typically these people have no boundaries. These are, and we talked about, this is not just in romantic relationships, it's showing up at work too, because these are typically people pleasers. These are people where you can dump all the work on and they're going to take it and take it and take it and do it and do it and do it, even to the detriment of themselves, where they're stressed and they're overworked and they're overwhelmed, but they don't want to set that healthy boundary. So that's anxiously attached. Then you have the whole opposite side of that, the dismissive avoidant. And I touched on that a little bit earlier. these are typically children who grew up where their voice wasn't heard. So this may be they may have grown up with very avoidant parents, or like your opinion doesn't matter, or you were really ignored as a child. You were kind of that whole, children are to be seen and not heard. That could fall into or put somebody into a dismissive avoidance. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm not really getting the love and care that I need. I'm not feeling like I'm heard. I'm not feeling like I can express myself. So that could tend to dismissive avoidance. These are people who I mentioned earlier, they need love and connection because they're a human being, but it's really scary for them. It doesn't feel good all the time, right? Because love didn't necessarily maybe feel good to them as a child. And so they will get in relationship. And here's the thing, unfortunately, anxiously attached people love to fall in love with dismissive avoidant people, right? Those two are just magnetics for each other, magnetic. So because the anxious person, like, give me love, give me love, give me love, they're very clingy. And the dismissive is like, whoa, chill out.
Too much. Yeah.
Too much. Give me space. Which then does what to the anxious person who's afraid of being abandoned? They cling more. Give me more. Give me more. They cling more. So that's a really hard dynamic if you're in that situation. That's a hard dynamic. So that's dismissive avoidant. Then we have the last one, which is kind of in between those two. And that's fearful avoidant. So I was fearful avoidant. This is the person that has both, unfortunately, the anxious attachment style characteristics and the avoidant. Because these are people who, I want love, give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. I love love, but it is also scary, right? It's the love feels good and love feels bad.
Too much.
It can be too much. So sometimes we sabotage our relationships because like, oh, this can be too much. I'm going to run. And sometimes we get clingy. So that person kind of sits in the middle and has, unfortunately, both of those attachment styles.
Wow. And most people coming to you, they fall under which style?
I would say most of them, two of them really in particular, it's going to be the fearful avoidant, because a lot of times those are people who have the dysfunction in their background, like the major dysfunction, some kind of addiction, I should say. Alcohol addiction, drug addiction, that type of thing when they're growing up, because it's that push, like that love is good and love is bad. So a lot of them are fearful avoidant, and then a lot of them are anxious attached. The one like gimme, they have no boundaries, and they will find themselves in a relationship a lot of times with people who will take advantage of them because they don't have any boundaries. They don't set any boundaries. They don't until they're, till it comes to
like burn.
Yeah. And that's how the fearful avoidant does as well. Like doesn't really set boundaries until they feel like they're being taken advantage of. And then they're very strict with it. They'll set a really hard boundary that then
it's extreme.
It's extreme, and they usually don't uphold it for very long.
Yeah.
Whew.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for breaking the styles down for us and for me. Like I've read about it. But I could never get around it, like wrap my head around it.
There's a lot to it,
Yeah. If I were to do a quick diagnosis on myself, I would fall in between of fearful and anxious. But I don't know.
Dismissive and anxious, probably. You might be fearful avoidant. Yeah.
Fearful avoidant. We're working on it.
Yeah.
I think the key is to be self-aware first.
Right.
So what is your advice, Shannon, for those listening today?
Yeah. I think, first of all, you can take the attachment style quiz. I have one on my website. If they want to go there, they can take the attachment style quiz. I think that's a really good place to start. They can go to topself.com and take that quiz. And the other part is getting curious about what is it that is causing my habits? What is it that is showing up over and over and over again that I haven't addressed? And then the third thing is to believe in yourself that you can. just know that you may have been going about it a little bit, it may be in the wrong direction. We might have been trying to do this through consciously, and we got to get to the root of it, to our subconscious. So that would be my 3 tips for someone to take the attachment style quiz, learn a little bit more, get curious, and have that belief in yourself that you can change.
So Shannon, what are you working on currently?
Gosh, so currently I do workshops for organizations and their teams because, as I mentioned, these attachment styles will show up in teams, in the workplace. And so, it's really hard to say, oh, I'm going to trust my team member with this project or trust my team member at work when you don't trust your own partner at home. But we expect that at work, right? The people pleasing. We talk about overwhelm all the time. And, sometimes it's just because this person is a people pleaser because they have that anxious attachment and it's showing up at work as dump everything on me. And then you may lose that person when they were a very valuable, savable employee. So that's what I'm working on now, but I've got one-on-one private coaching for individuals and the group coaching, the boot camp. We've got another one coming up in April. So anybody
Beautiful.
can join. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Now, Shannon, I have a question regarding self-worth.
Okay.
Because my podcast talks a lot about self-worth. So the question for you, Shannon, how does the process of self-discovery and building self-worth, in your opinion, differ for introverts and extroverts? And what unique challenges might each face?
So if we think about introverts and extroverts, I think for one, I would love for people to look up the actual definition of introvert and extrovert, because sometimes we might think about it differently, right? So I think it may not matter whether you're introvert or extrovert. I don't know enough about those 2 different styles of individuals, but to me, it's all based on these core beliefs that we have about ourselves. And you have to go back to say, whether I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert, if I'm lacking that self-worth, what is at the core of it? And that's really where I would start. That self-awareness, as you said, that's everything. That's key. We can't change something that we don't know. For most people, it's been a really long time since we took out that junk drawer of old beliefs and habits and dumped them out and go, okay, do I still need everything in here? I probably don't, right? I may have developed some of these things as a child that I don't need anymore as an adult because I can take care of myself now. I can get myself out of situations now. So I think it really runs the same. I could be wrong, but I feel like it runs the same whether you're introvert or extrovert.
I love it. I tend to agree. I agree to that too. Because at the core of it, what do we believe about ourselves? What do we believe that we deserve at work, in relationships, business, community? I think people pray for what they want, but sometimes once the universe gives whatever it is you want, we are not ready to receive it. And that could come from that core programming that, hey, I've asked for this actually, but then I don't think I'm worthy enough to receive all these blessings.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing. You pray for $1 million and then you have 1 million and shoot, what am I going to do with this $1 million? How do I strategize?
Yeah. Or sometimes it's never enough, right?
Yeah.
I still don't feel good. I still don't feel the way that I want to feel. And that's because those surface things are not what's missing. It's your belief that you have about yourself that's really missing. The worthiness, the belief in worthiness that you have about yourself.
Yeah. And I also want to echo that this journey is lifelong.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all have things that we're working on and cleaning our closet every day or every season, right? Some things come up and you realize and you're aware of it, and don't beat yourself up. Tackle it one by one. If you need help, go to podcasts, yes, but if you really need that guidance, then go to professionals like yourself, or go to therapy. I know therapy is big in the Western culture. It's not so much in the Eastern culture because it's a taboo.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, and you know what's interesting about that? So you talked about, I have my own podcast. And so looking at podcast statistics, they're very high in other countries where that is the case, because these people are looking for solution and resolution and answers, but they don't want to go outwardly and say, I'm going to a therapist, because it's looked at that way. So thank you for bringing that up, because I don't want people to feel bad, but we can see that in the numbers in podcasting as well.
Whew. Wow. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Yes, of course.
What is your heart's greatest wish, Shannon?
I'm sorry?
What is your heart's greatest wish?
So the whole reason I started doing this is because I didn't want someone else to go as long as I did, feeling like they were stuck there, that there was nothing they could do about it. And that's my greatest wishes for, even if just one person realizes much sooner in life, I can actually change this, and I need to be on search for that, because it's going to take maybe a bit. And that's my wish for everyone, is to feel like they can change and to believe in themselves.
Yeah, and I also want to add to that, if you're embarrassed, or if you're feeling ashamed or shy that you're faced with this issue, then just, go tell your bestie or someone that you really trust, and just maybe open up to them and say, hey, I'm having this issue, but I think I heard somebody said this. I think they could help.
Yeah.
No. So just don't stay there and just hope and pray that it will go away, or try to solve it yourself.
Right. Yeah. Well, my gosh, thank you so much for having me on. This was a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for your wisdom and for continuing your work. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And then for our listeners, this has been Your Word List. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you've ever felt wordless, remember, you are not alone. But always remember that your soul chose to be here to matter. And for that reason alone, you are worthy. I'd like to thank you again, Shannon, for today, and to all of you for listening. Until then, I am Nick Nieras, your host, signing off. And always remember, you are worthy and you are enough. See you in the next episode. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Hi, Shannon. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for saying yes to be interviewed today. I'm so happy to have you on my show. Now, for our listeners and for you, I'd like to introduce myself formally. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, the topic for today is, I'm just going to go into it directly, but not now, it's jealousy. So, yeah. Before that, I'd like to introduce you to our listeners first, and then we can get right into the conversation. So, hello everyone. We have Shannon Bryant here with us. Shannon helps women demolish their patterns and dominate their future. As a pattern transformation expert and founder of Top Self, she bridges the gap between attachment theory and real-world transformation, showing women how to recognize and transform patterns that limit their personal and professional lives. Now, she's also a podcaster. Her podcast is named Top Self.
Right.
And drawing from her experience as a corporate director of learning and development, where she's delivered over 400 learning training programs, brings a unique blend of professional expertise and personal insight
to her work. Welcome to the show, Shannon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, okay, before we get into this very intriguing topic of jealousy.
It's a spicy topic, yeah.
It is. Like, asking for a friend. First, let's start. What was it like growing up as a Shanenn Bryant? Love this episode? Now, transformation doesn't end here. Head on to @holistic.lifestyle_with_Nick. That is on my Instagram. Or head on to my website, www.holisticlifestyle.com for more info on my coaching framework, which is the Worthy, Authentic, and Abundant Framework, digital guides, and my upcoming events such as retreats and master classes and workshops. Now, I also do intuitive readings where we get to check on your soul path